So today is one of the what we're calling one principle that we're focused on. And we're building off of the conversation we had last week on the book, The Advice Trap by Michael Bungay Stanier. We talked about the advice monster. You may remember why we jump in so fast and how hard it is to actually stay curious. And so this week, I thought we'd go back to kind of the core idea that started all of this and kind of the heart of Michael's work and the main principle around his first book called The Coaching Habit. Have it here. And again, I see these two books, The Coaching Habit and The Advice Trap, as kind of a companion volume. And so we just felt like we just had to go back and briefly touch on kind of the genius of the coaching habit. But the main principle is this, which is to stay curious longer and to rush to advice a little more slowly. So I thought I would just share the 7 questions that Michael outlines in the book, The Coaching Habit, which is basically how do you have a coaching conversation in a work environment? And then, Britt, I'd love to get your perspective on coaching in general, since you're being coached day in and day out in a professional sports setting. So here's the 7 questions. Let me just go through these. So number 1 is what he calls the kickstart question, which is what's on your mind. The second question he calls the awe question, and it's simply, and what else? The third question is the focus question, which is what's the real challenge here for you? The fourth question is the foundation question, which is what do you want? The fifth question is the lazy question, which is how can I help? The sixth question is the strategic question, which is if you're saying yes to this, what are you saying no to? And then the seventh and last question is the learning question. What was most useful here for you? So again, 7 simple questions. It's a very simple framework, but I think it's the best example I've come across where people talk about coaching in like a work or professional environment where it's like, okay, how do you be a good coach? And this is framework, literally, if you just ask these questions, then you automatically are, in a way, like a pretty effective coach. And so I just felt like it was worth an episode just to share that. So Brett, just curious on your perspective on this. You are coached day in, day out by some of the top coaches literally in the world and in your realm. So just curious your perspective on this. Obviously, I'm thinking of it in terms from a work environment, but just curious your perspective.
Yeah, well, I'll repeat a few of these for our listeners, because I'm sure you'll want a repeat of them just to keep thinking about them. But I've often thought about this idea, because I've thought about going into coaching before, and I've learned from some great coaches. Learn from some not so great coaches as well. I've often thought about what is the balance that you strike as a coach between explicitly saying like, this is how this needs to be done. Do this or don't do this. And, kind of helping the player understand from their own perspective what they should do, It's, kind of giving some freedom in different areas. And I think it obviously depends on the player and the situation. But, I think about, even specific routes that I'm expected to run as a receiver. There are certain ones when it's like, this is the way it's done. There's a concrete way and we got to do it this way, and so coaches, I think the author said in the last thing, it's unambiguous. Like this is how it's done. But then there are other things where I think a lot of these questions are good, like, what's the real challenge here for you? I can't tell you how many times the coaches will say that because they know that in order for us to understand as players, it can't just come from them. We have to kind of come up with it on our own. What's the real challenge here? Right? What is this defender trying to do? And if you do this, what are you unable to do? And so they kind of help guide you so that you come up with it because then they know you understand it more. It actually reminds me of Inception, the movie, when they are essentially trying to plant an idea in this person's mind so that it grows organically. And in order to do it, they have to go to the deepest level of this man's soul and do the simplest version, put the simplest version of this idea in his soul so that it grows organically. Because if this person suspects that this idea comes from an outside source, from an external source, it won't grow organically. It won't stick. And I've always loved that concept of like, in order, for you to influence someone, you almost have to help them come up with this idea or, their own version of it organically. So I think that, that is a big idea behind this advice trap and all these questions is it's a guide to help other people come up with their own solutions, because those solutions will always stick more. Those solutions will mean more, and be better attuned to the person's situation. And then there are times when it is very black and white, and I do think there are specific answers. Like he said in the last episode, where's the coffee? You don't have to ask him, how can I help? What's useful here to you? There are open-ended questions and non-open-ended questions, but I love this guide. So yeah, once again, what's on your mind and what else? Because oftentimes people just need to think out loud in order to get to the real root of the problem. What's on your mind and what else? What's the real challenge here for you? What do you want? How can I help? The sixth one is so fascinating to me. If you're saying yes to this, what are you saying no to? Mm-hmm. The opportunity cost question. I think, what book is it that we've done that has talked about this idea,
Yeah, multipliers, getting things done. Obviously, 7 habits. Our grandfather talks about this, like in terms of priority. And if you're saying
essentialism,
essentialism, yeah. They really, there's kind of a common thread.
A common theme, and I think it's something that people don't naturally think about all the time. If you're saying yes to this, or even if you're going to do something this way, what are you saying no to? Essentially. And then, what's most useful here to you? So it's just a guide. I really love it. And just gives people time to slow down and think.
Yeah, I agree. And that's where I think the genius, and that's why we wanted to just spend this one episode on kind of these 7 questions, because honestly, even, if you're a younger person, like early on in your career, and you just master like these 7 questions, like if you get a chance to be in a leadership opportunity or get to mentor people. And I've heard this at work before over the years of like, oh, you need to help coach and guide people. And it always feels like this nebulous, like, oh, how do I do that in a work setting? It's a little more obvious what you deal with, Brit, with sports, right? You have a coach that tells you what to do, and that's how I think we think of it. But these 7 questions, honestly, it's like, man, if you master these 7 questions and are aware of them, and again, aware of the advice monster, putting that down and then having these questions in your back pocket, honestly, I think it could really help you as a leader, as someone to help influence people, and not influence in a manipulative way, but just in a genuine way, where you can like help get the best out of other people.
And I think that, once you ask these questions and you do understand the problem a lot more, you're 10 times more attuned to the advice you should give, and I think for all of us, there are specific people in all of our lives where it's like, no, we want advice. I'm not asking for you to help me find my own solution, right? I think of a couple of people in my life. I'm like, no, I don't know the solution. That's why I'm asking. And so there's definitely a difference between everyday conversation, and we feel that advice monster come up. Oh, I need to share this. And when someone is actually asking for advice, and searching for it. And I think this is a good guide in both scenarios. But yeah, there are a few people in my life where I'm like, no, I don't know. You tell me, and I'm going to believe it. I think about those people, and the reason why I feel that way is a lot of those people, our dad is one of them. I've heard all these 7 questions from my dad countless times. And so I know that they approach it with this much I just respect and desire to actually help. It, like you said in the last episode, it's being known as someone who helps find the root of the problem and gives advice rather than just someone who shares.
Great. Well, thanks everyone for listening, and we'll be back soon. And again, appreciative to Michael Bungay Stanier for his wisdom and insight in helping us know how to coach people and know how to better lead people and how to influence people. So thanks everyone for listening.
Thanks.